And we are live. Hello, Christian. How are you?
Hi, Steve. I'm fine. Thanks for having me and continuing our discussions.
Yes, thanks for joining me on this rather kind of impromptu session that we figured we'd put together on a whim. So, why don't you introduce yourself briefly and kind of explain a little background about why we're having this conversation?
Yeah, sure. I'm Christian Lenz. I'm working at a Business Central partner in Germany, in Bremen, in northern Germany. And I work as a development facilitator in the last years. Before I was a project manager, developer, and consultant first. I have more than 20 years experience back to when the product was Navision Financials then. And our background for this session is that we did a session on the Directions EMEA conference last week together. I was so happy that you were my co-presenter there. So I saw one of your blog posts in the beginning of this year as you tried Agile and shared your experiences. And I thought, okay, perhaps let's look at some points not to disregard or dismiss Agile at all. And we thought we could do a session about it. Had very fruitful discussions for the preparations, but so much less time in the session last week. So as there were some questions left, I think, and estimates is one of the most interesting topics from the beginning on. So yeah, I was very happy that you picked up this topic and yeah, just doing a live stream about it and talk about it in further and more depth, for example.
Yes, and to kind of provide more background at the Directions EMEA conference in Hamburg that was it last week. I'm still reorienting coming back home.
Yeah.
We only had 45 minutes, and that was 45 minutes for presentation and Q&A. So to cover even just the concept of Agile in 45 minutes and have a unique twist on it and have some discussion and interaction, I mean, people spend their entire careers focusing on Agile, right? So
Right.
it's hard to do the topic service in 45 minutes. And so we thought after the conference we chatted a little and we thought, well, hey, why don't we do some live streams where we pick one slice, one just narrow topic. In this case, it's one word, literally one word, right? So we have one word we're going to talk about today, and it is estimates. And this this one word is a highly controversial word. So I apologize to Agile folks out there. Here's your trigger warning that you may start screaming at the monitor, but we're just looking to explore this. So we are not experts in this domain, right? We are trying to learn. We're trying to ask questions. We're trying to find resources like how do we break into this kind of secluded world of Agile that I don't know about you, but I'm finding it hard to get in. There seem to be some barriers that this community, Agile community, does not make it easy or terribly friendly for people who are absolutely clueless to try to learn and you know take your first steps in the Agile world. Do you get that impression? You probably have more experience with Agile, though.
My impression is, as we as partners try to adopt those techniques, as Microsoft, as the main provider of our solution, is already more on that path. I see that most of the experts or those who are very public on Twitter or something like that tend to bring their opinion to one extreme viewpoint and not looking, or it's very hard to orient for us as a partner what to pick, what is adaptable for us. So for Scrum, for example, they say if you don't do everything of Scrum, you don't do Scrum. Okay, and then you stay there. So what to pick? What other methodology to apply upon? And my approach was, what can I pick a single tool which is from a high value and can be adapted in our way of doing our projects or product development or in whatever context we are.
So that was a much more eloquent and politically savvy way of putting it than I. So let's start this controversial discussion that will blow people's minds, shall we? Okay. So one word, estimates. That's all I need to say. And I'm sure people are twitching right now based on the experiences we've seen. So the idea is that I come from a world where I say, hello, Mr. Customer, prospective customer. How can I help you? And they say, I would like this. I would like this implementation. I would like this customization. I would like this software, whatever it is in the realm of ERP. And they say, well, okay, yeah, I'd like you to do that, but how long will it take? I say, that's a reasonable question, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, right? And then they ask, when will it be done? Because I need to plan. I need to know when I can start using this because I have dependencies I need to coordinate. Reasonable question, right? And then, of course, the obvious question, how much is this going to cost me? Because I do not have unlimited funds. I am constrained by a budget like all companies. And so I need to know the price tag for what you're going to deliver. And reasonable statements. I need to get it approved, right? Even a controller CFO can't just say, oh yeah, sure, $100,000, 200, 100, whatever. I'm cool with that. I'm not going to worry about it, right? Or if it's November, like it is now, I need to include it in our budget for next year, right? And companies budget. This is a fundamental practice of many companies, right? Well, lo and behold, this entire discussion is highly controversial when you put it in the context of Agile, or so it seems. I mean, I'm open to like counterfactuals here, but we seem to be encountering some level of controversy here where there is argument. So what does this mean? And feel free and jump in anytime, Christian. So here is a quote presented without any context. And if you just look at this quote, you tell me what it seems like. I do not see how you can have any agility with project-based pricing. The idea that you can specify exactly what you're going to build up front is integral to project thinking. Agile does not work that way, period. And I'm like, what? Who is this? What is he talking about? Like project thinking, is that like a condescending statement? I don't know. Well, it turns out, I'm not familiar with him, but apparently Alan Holub is a prominent expert, shall we say? Is that accurate? Of the Agile principles, Agile manifesto. And so I was like, what's going on here? Now, there is, if you only look at this tweet, there is some missing context. So here is the important context. And I think this is perhaps more important than the quote I just saw. And if you've ever done consulting work, you've ever done development work, you should be familiar with all of these things. You should be nodding your head right now, say, yep, exactly, I totally understand. So he refers to it as a traditional agency contract. We'll call it a partner or a consulting firm and a customer. This is adversarial to its core. You argue about price, about scope, and as the work begins, you argue about changes. Anyone heard of a change request, right? And the customer says, why should I be paying for that? That should have been included, right? And you argue more about scope and deadlines and cost. All sounds familiar to me. The agency, the consulting firm or partner, is worried about going broke. They can't do unlimited work for a fixed budget. Now, the client wants work that they don't pay for. They want it all included, right? Well, you said it would do X. Doesn't that mean Y, Z, A, B, C? They want work they don't pay for. They gripe about paying too much for work they can't see. Wait, what is this line item, $10,000 for data access layer, for web service calls, like for DevOps? I don't see DevOps. I just see a window with buttons. Why should I pay for that, right? The negotiation is constant, unpleasant, expensive, time sink. The risk is very high for both parties, right? It's war. And it's like, whoa, okay. Obviously, he's been in these trenches, right? Compare that to an agile contract, which is an interesting term, right?
Yeah.
The agile contract is about collaboration. That's different, right? It's not negotiation and battle, it's collaboration. We collaborate on what to do first. We build it and then collaborate on the details as we build. We then collaborate on what to do next. We then deliver frequently so the client knows and sees exactly what they're paying for. We get paid for the work we do. The client doesn't pay for the things they don't need because they're in charge of what goes first, what goes second, and what goes third.
Yeah.
It's a fundamentally social arrangement. Interesting terminology there. There is very little risk. Now, I would kind of counter this. I've seen all sorts of weird, unexpected risks. So I think there still is risk, but I would counter that there is mitigated risk, right? Because you have the opportunity to expose risk at each delivery, each discussion, each checkpoint, each sprint, whatever. Well, when Agile Manifesto is talking about collaboration over negotiation, this is what it's talking about. So this is a very different mindset than the typical how much, when, get it done, big bang delivery type situation, right?
Yeah.
So have you had a situation where someone has proposed an agile contract and collaboration? I believe you worked with a vendor, right?
Yeah, as we started developing a solution together with an external development partner, we tried some agile methodologies, but it was not our daily business. And as we get in touch with them and thought, okay, how can we do it together? Because we had to share what we like to have built with an external team. How could this proceed? And they proposed going Scrum. And in the beginning, we had exactly that discussion because we were internally used to have a budget, have a timeline, what can be delivered and something like that. So in the first steps, we were discussing what have we to provide as requirements to get them on board and get them in the situation that they can work for us without too much friction, I would say. But underlying was at the whole time this notion, okay, how can we get to a point where we exactly can answer these questions? How much will it cost? When will it be ready? Thinking about we can make all those requirements fixed for the whole set of products. We had a product first on another platform on NAV, and we've previously discussed, do we migrate it or do we build it cloud native, so to speak, for Business Central? And we wanted to discuss this approach. And they came exactly with this. We cannot provide you an exact estimate. Give us the requirements so we can get a glimpse what you like to build, but we cannot fix the complete scope and make an accurate estimation of then it will be ready and it costs you amount X. And it was constantly mediation between me as the one who was accompanying the product owner from our side and the team of the external developers who it was very, very good explained how their approach was, but having to negotiate between the assumption from our management team and this approach was very interesting, so to speak. So, but we got this approved and we started this project.
Now,
so
I do have a slide later on to discuss this, and were you kind of taken aback by that proposal? When they said, no, we can't give you a price tag, we need to, we prefer to work in an agile method.
Yeah. We constantly try to translate it into ours.
Into your waterfall mindset.
Yeah. How
okay.
to to make a list of all the requirements we like to get done. And then they also had this story point approach, which we probably will come back to later. And then trying to translate it. And then it was, they showed a huge warning sign. Be warned, there's no relationship, no constant relationship ever experienced between story points and hours. Story points are just a tool to manage how much can be done in a time box or in a sprint or something like that. But no empirical investigation brought up a real relationship between story points and euros or something like that, or hours. Mm-hmm. But I think the business side is so tied to trading, and for trading you need a certain amount you can trade on. So it is very hard to bring these perspectives to a match, I think, and to know that this match isn't intended, even if in a specific method as Scrum, for example, is really good to know, to bring someone while a discussion, while in negotiating, back to, hey, this is just a tool for the planning perspective, not for the estimation.
Interesting you say the word planning. Here we go on the next slide. And this is your trigger warning, because this book was one of the elements that started this discussion on the concept of estimates. And this is a book called Agile Estimating and Planning by Mike Cohn. And I don't know where I came across this, how I heard about it or whatever, but I bought a used copy off of eBay or something for a couple bucks, and I eventually got around to reading it. And I posted a photo of this from Heathrow Airport while I was waiting to go to Hamburg, and November 7th, Light Airport reading. And whoa, it sparked a discussion, as the kids like to say, right? Yeah. Now, that discussion somehow even triggered the Twitter warning to hide tweets that may contain offensive content. There was no offensive content, but I thought that was rather funny that even occurred. And so, fascinatingly, look who responded to this tweet, Alan Holub. And he said, Mike's book is close to 20 years old at this point. Agile has evolved considerably since then, and to be honest, I didn't really like the book when it was new. I've never been a fan of story points and velocity, which I haven't gotten to that point. I'm assuming those are concepts discussed in the book. Mm-hmm. And the whole notion of planning of the sort he discusses is very waterfall. And so I'm thinking, well, how this book is called Agile Estimating and Planning. But that's waterfall? Like, I was so confused. And so then I decided for fun to go check out Amazon reviews, and whoa, like obviously Amazon reviews is just a dumpster fire, but author does not understand subject he tried to write about. Agile is not project management. And this reviewer talks about writing the review is like being a mosquito in a nudist colony. So some rather vivid imagery, some bizarre stuff. So this book really brings the people out, and they want to fight about it. And I found this really fascinating. So, okay, so it seems there's no such thing as estimating and planning in Agile if I were to believe the advocates of Agile, or they're just not compatible, which I'm still trying to wrap my brain around, right? But continuing this Twitter thread, what else came up? Now, Neil Benson from Customery is, I've been told repeatedly that he offers training and focus on Agile for his projects as part of his practice. And he reiterates a point that I totally agree with, and I say all the time. My customers want to know how long it takes and how much it costs. Period. Like, I can say, customer, you're wrong, but we'll talk about what happens then. We need estimates in order to take care of those customers. Not sure why Agile teams wouldn't estimate, even if it's just capacity planning for the next sprint. So he's offering a counter argument like, okay, sure, fine, you're not going to estimate the whole project, but what if you just do this one sprint? Okay. And then someone responds, yes, your questions here and more have been raised for a decade, to the hashtag no estimates movements champion. Like, they have a hashtag. Can you imagine? And apparently there is this movement called the no estimates movement, and there's a counter movement, pro estimate. And I had no idea I was wading into such hot controversy. They have had no substantive answers, and they avoid actual dialogue with people who challenge their thinking. This is like a political drama writ large for project nerds, I guess. I don't know. So this is a fascinating topic, all based off of one word of estimates. So back to Neil's point, my customers ask these questions. So I need to include in our budget how much, etc. And if I were to propose, no, I can't give you a quote, I can't give you this. We do the Agile thing, and we're going to do sprints, and you're in charge of what's next and all that negotiation and collaboration. What am I going to hear? Well, the other vendors gave me estimates and quotes, right? And then you can't even give me an estimate? Do you not know what you're doing? Are you not competent? And so I can you imagine that? And so I think it's kind of brave for the consulting firm that you worked with to say, hey, I'm sorry. I know you want to spend 100,000 euros with us, but that's not how we work, right? So anyway, any thoughts on all this ranting that I'm making?
I think you could bring the point that is the customer able to provide all the information needed in the requirements? Because
of course they are. They're the customer. They know their business better than anyone in the whole wide world. And you talk to Bob, Sally, Nancy, and Ted, and they'll give you everything you need. Every question will be answered.
That I would challenge in the first things, and I would do a small workshop to figure out how valid is this really? Because being in such a business domain for so long, we experienced waterfall projects earlier on. And there we have our experience. We have a fixed planning for everything, for the whole project. And while you are doing the project, you see changes currently coming on, priorities changing that fast. And the customers also want everything that we didn't know before and didn't say before has to be in the end of the project to go live. It's really there. And
well,
then
of course we need that report if we're doing this. You should have known that, right?
And I like the point. I don't know where I get it from. I think from Roy Osheroff. It's something that you as a project manager or technical leader have to think about. What can you as a team of developers can commit to? And you have to negotiate on, okay, if you have scope creep, if you offer the option of scope creep, increasing the scope but staying on the timeline, it's up to you if you do that commitment. So there are many parties to consider. Do I offer this option? This first, in my impression, starts at the developers to say, okay, we can increase the scope, but we have to extend the timeline or add more resources to our team. If we can agree this, we can commit to it, and then bring the salespeople on board to help discussing this with the customer. But I see there's so much space for learning, so to speak.
Well, and if you start to have those conversations, to Alan's point, it's going to be a constant battle. And I totally agree. I've been there, right? But this should have been included. And why would you not have thought of this? You're the expert. And so there's a constant tension there. So I'm seeing all this input and feedback and this, like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And in a rather humorous twist, I start Googling for, agile estimates, agile estimation, how to do estimates for an agile project. And I see this article from Project Management Institute, PMI, and surely that's a reputable organization. And Michelle Sliger is submitting this conference paper in 2012 on Agile and estimating. I'm like, ta-da! I have the smoking gun. This is my answer on Agile estimation techniques. And what was the real kicker? Guess what her references were? One of her references was Agile Estimating and Planning, the book by Mike Cohn that is now dismissed in Alan's tweet and others. So I was like, oh, so it's just all these circular references that I can't get away from, right? So I was like, okay, that was pretty humorous. Then next up, I'm like, okay, I started searching more and I come across this site called Agile Alliance. And guess what? Talk after talk, after topic, after paper, no estimates with no dogma to estimate or not to estimate. What is an Agile estimate? Top 6 important Agile planning and estimation techniques. So the word estimate is clearly being used in the context of Agile by many people, but it's like this constant argument, it seems. So at this point, I'm not even sure. These are some of these are behind a paywall or they're paid services and training, so I couldn't read them. But I thought it was rather humorous that clearly within the Agile community, there is disagreement over this topic in many dimensions, right? So far, I've been unable to get a clear conclusion, but I think the general concept is if you're being realistic with yourself, and if you've been on waterfall projects where you've tried, you cannot realistically estimate the time required or necessarily the duration or necessarily the resources or gather all the requirements of a complex project that has never been done before. Like, you can try, you can pretend, but shortly after you start that project, what is a plan never survives first contact with the enemy type of thing. You will quickly see your plan fall apart and things will get added, your timeline will extend, and your budget is going to go over. So anyway, while we were preparing for this discussion, I thought you had a great quote. And we were talking about how a consulting firm might speak with a customer, come up with this waterfall project, a plan, a cost, an estimate, a timeline, and say, yep, we can definitely do this. And the customer will sign off on it. And you said, sometimes it is very strange that customers would buy a big project with just the trust gained in a handful of meetings between half a dozen people. And I saw that, I was like, isn't that true? A customer is purchasing a $200,000 project based off of a couple meetings and like an assessment of competence and this piece of paper, an Excel spreadsheet, and a dollar sign at the bottom saying, oh, okay, $200,000, let's go.
Yeah.
But
to have this right, this is not common, and there's an ongoing, sometimes months, sometimes years in having meetings and discussing the topics. But you have to face that is just the tip of the iceberg you're getting to know during these conversations. And I came up with this quote from the notion, how important is trust? So what you are building up is trust in this situation. This partner can handle our project, but this doesn't guarantee that the project goes well if you don't take into account that there is much, much, much below the surface you don't know. And for me, the notion of agile is I can do an estimate, and you have a big cloud of possibilities where this can go
Yep.
related to timeline and budget. And you can see waterfall for me is, okay, we start, and then in the end we're totally out of this cloud we thought we would end. And Agile is offering some tools and some techniques to check where to go next. And as we had it, I think we had it on our slides in Hamburg, the notion of doing waterfall in sprints.
Yep.
This assumes that you stay with your original set of requirements, your original backlog, that's what you wanted to have, and cut it into pieces. I would really say, yes, that's waterfall in sprints. And for me, the agile notion is, let's try a little thing first so we gain more experience on this topic, and then see what is really important to you next. What is very difficult in these times when we have customer relations going on for decades now. They have a highly integrated, sometimes highly customized system, and they don't think back that what was built during the years step by step. Now they have all of this and like it to transfer to a new platform.
That's a great point.
It's really difficult to say, okay, you have to cut it again. It's just like in the first times we had computers just can do text, then graphics, then music, then video. Okay, then the phones came out, the same thing. With the phone, you can first do text, then audio, then video, and something like that. You have to restart every cycle a new technology comes up. But with this really good platform of an ERP system like Business Central, with everything integrated, there's a huge package you have to transfer. These are two contexts. Do you have a customer base that had those ERP systems, or is it really a new start? And think about what is in the project of an implementation already known and what is unknown. And the agile approach and the estimate approach, where there's high risk, applies to what is unknown. That I would take in consideration when how to mitigate the risk, because for me it's the risk mitigation that is important here.
I think in general the recognition of unknowns often does not occur, or it doesn't occur appropriately, and there's a level of not arrogance but just assumption that people really understand the details of their business process, their systems, and they greatly underestimate the complexity, the change, the nuance, and stuff that they've taken for granted for years, to your point. So, yep. So, excellent point. Any final thoughts or closing thoughts about Agile?
In the context of
Agile estimates, the controversial topic.
I think when we say that is project estimation, we have to consider that there are projects, and to be agile, you don't have to disregard project and project estimates. It's still here. So I don't have the final answer on how to find a middle way there. But I like the approach of reducing the risk because we do smaller steps and adapt as we walk. Yep. That's a good principle for me. And that would also be good for doing estimates, doing smaller parts of estimate, and then adapt when we learn how far are we from our original estimate.
Well, thank you very much for the discussion. This is just we literally discussed one word, right? And one concept or topic. And so we're going to try to explore other words related to Agile, and can we figure out how to use them in the context of Business Central, whether you're implementing, customizing, doing reporting, supporting, whatever that means. To what extent can we use Agile for Business Central projects? So with that, thank you very much, Christian. And thanks everyone for watching.
Bye.
Bye-bye.